SIG 23, 10 December 2020. This is number 2. This is from PortObserver.com. This is the low intensity conflict intel. Pennsylvania leftists calls for hotel occupations. Far left chat room participants called for Philadelphians to occupy area hotels in response to the city allegedly evicting homeless people from COVID-19 prevention sites. Posters for the event read, "Show up, occupy, and show the city we won't stand by as they murder our neighbors." Observers note, in conjunction with eviction blockades at rental properties and courthouses, far-left groups have issued calls to occupy hotels and impede sweeps of homeless camps in several cities. RAS occupants call for body armor and additional supplies. Anarchists occupying the Red House Autonomous Zone, or RAS, in Portland, Oregon, are soliciting for a greater amount of supplies online. Their wish list includes ballistic armor, shields, and other protective equipment, medical gear, shelters, generators, food, and water. Occupants reinforced barricades with more material, caltrops. If you don't know what caltrops are, look them up. Nasty for the feet and tires. And spike strips, and staged various projectiles at covered positions. Occupants also constructed a handful of makeshift catapults to launch larger projectiles over the barricades. Yesterday, Portland Police Chief Chuck Lovell said, "We are aware of the stockpile of weapons and the presence of firearms." Observers note, the requested supplies indicate that anarchists are preparing for a long-term occupation and resistance to any effort by law enforcement to clear them out. Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler, or as I like to call him, Antifa Ted, authorized officers to use any lawful means necessary yesterday, but officers have yet to move on the RAS since the initial eviction of squatters. Why, Ted? Why? You were very supportive of these same people 2 or 3 months ago while they were creating havoc and destruction. Why the sudden change? This is potentially due to reports of firearms and other weapons present in the area. Of note, the seizing and defense of territory against government forces is an indicator of a developing insurgency. Has been. Michigan State Representative threatens Trump supporters. Oh, this was a good one. If you hadn't seen it, I highly recommend you go online and you watch this video. On Facebook Live, State Representative Cynthia Johnson, Democrat, of course, threatened Trump supporters saying, quote, "So this is just a warning to you Trumpers. Be careful. Walk lightly. We ain't playing with you. Enough of the shenanigans. And for those of you who are soldiers, you know how to do it. Do it right. Be in order. Make them pay." End quote. Johnson was stripped of all her committee positions and is being investigated for further disciplinary actions by the Michigan House of Representatives. I doubt it'll actually go anywhere. Observers note, this type of rhetoric is likely to continue for years past the Trump administration and could lead to increased political violence against Trump supporters. Remember, it was the now presumptive Vice President-elect Harris who promised that this could and should continue. The violence, the unrest. There's a very direct implication in her statement. If you haven't seen or heard her statement, perhaps you should look it up and hear it for yourself. Washington man threatens to blow up labor union building. Okay. Police arrested an individual holding an office worker hostage and threatening to blow up a Teamsters union building in Spokane, Washington. The man's backpack containing wires and producing smoke was ultimately found to not be an explosive. Spokane, Washington Democrats claimed the act was politically motivated, and an individual in the building reported the man had a political manifesto with him. Why wouldn't he? Grant County Democratic Chair Steve Starr said, "Oh, this is good. I'm reading this for the first time along with you. I personally think this was inevitable. I suspect we're going to see a major event." Oh, this is so rich. He says, "I personally think this was inevitable. I suspect we're going to see a major event where multiple people die before leadership of the Republican Party denounce this kind of activity." Observers note, local Democrats are already attributing some responsibility to Republicans for the incident. Details, however, are still emerging, including the man's demands, identity, political bent, and the contents of his alleged manifesto. But this incident does underscore the fact that political violence continues. And remember, very typically, with Democrats, if they accuse you of some sort of wrongdoing, that's because they have been, or they will in the future do near precisely the same thing they're accusing you of. So, in order to deflect from their activities, or the activities of people they influence, in this case, this individual, they will redirect focus onto whoever their political enemies are. In this case, the American people, because they no longer are. If you're a Marxist, if you're a Stalinist, Leninist, Maoist, progressive, anybody who supports them, hell, the Democrat Party, in my opinion, gave up their right some time ago to be counted among American citizens. They no longer hold to the principles that founded and governed and guided this country for over 200 years. They stopped that in the 60s. Upcoming event calendar. 11 through 12 December. So looks like what? Friday, Saturday. Defend DC, All Out DC, Washington DC. Careful, folks, as you're all out in DC in December. Don't get anything frozen off. Or do, it's up to you. 12 December, All Out Against America. Of course you are. You're all out against America. That's what you've been doing, every one of you Biden voters. That's what you've been doing for quite a while. anything to destroy the foundations of the country, the thing which actually brought this country up above any other country on the globe in history in a short amount of time. And you, Biden supporters, want to make sure you bring it down to the lowest common denominator, along with every other socialist, Marxist, Maoist country, because that's what you do. So, 12 December, All Out Against America, Good Night Fascism. You wouldn't know what fascism is. No, hell, you know what? Look in the mirror. Antifa, Olympia, Washington, 12 December, Run the Fascists Out. BLM, Atlanta, Georgia. Great. On your way out of town, make room for some people who aren't a waste of breath. And 12 December, March for Trump, Washington, D.C. Yeah, that's it for that one. All right, 623 out.